بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي وبعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. And good evening, my dear brothers and sisters, and welcome to this session of Friday Night Mic Drop, a session that we're actually having after quite some time. This is a program that we had started during the previous lockdown. And once, of course, we exited the lockdown, our online programming came down a bit as we started doing a lot more in-person programs. But we're back in this situation with capacity limits and restrictions. And therefore, we are back with Friday Night Mic Drop. And tonight, actually, we'll be touching upon a very important topic. And by the way, before I continue, Friday Night Mic Drop is really supposed to be an opportunity to touch upon important topics, but also sort of get into the topics with a bit of depth. Because you see, a lot of times when we're having lectures or especially when we're having a Friday khutbah, we want to talk about important topics, but we don't really get an opportunity to interact with other experts in the field who may know more about the issue than the khatib, himself. And on top of that, this platform allows us to delve into issues, but we really want to keep it real. So that's why we say conversations from the heart. So straight up questions, straight answers, and really a genuine conversation on important topics. And tonight we'll be talking about how to maintain a healthy marriage. As we know, the pandemic is taking a toll on people's mental well-being, mental health, emotional well-being, and relationships are suffering. And a lot of people are having challenging times with their family members, dealing with children, with spouses. So this is, the topic that we want to touch upon tonight, but specifically talking about marriages and how we can avoid some of the issues that often come up inside of marriages. So inshallah tonight we'll be joined by two experts in the field, because I don't consider myself to be an expert in this, but joining us is Chaplain, Sister Barbara. Sister Barbara, mashallah, is a registered psychotherapist, and she has great experience in counseling families, couples here in the Muslim community. So Sister Barbara is joining us, and also joining us is Imam, Dr. Zijad Delic, family relationship specialist, mashallah. Imam at the SNMC, South European Muslim Community Masjid, mashallah. Sister Barbara is in Cornwall tonight, I believe, right, at home. And Imam Zijad, mashallah, is at his masjid in Nepean. So welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much to the both of you for joining us this evening. Sister Barbara, let me start with you. So, when you look at the community, our community here in Ottawa, how would you describe the state of marriages in our community from your perspective?
So I think that it's an unfair vantage point because people often come to me when they're having problems in their marriages. So it's a self-selected population that is struggling. So I think I'm still an optimist. I think marriage with, is and can be a truly beautiful thing. But it needs certain things that our community is evolving and trying to do, but sometimes misses. And it's the idea that we do need to support young people, but also learn how to give them voice and give them the tools so that they can make good discernments. I think sometimes we get all excited about the wedding and the wedding party and the wedding dress and a this and a that. And we miss, and also we're busy trying to protect our young people from things that would create problems for them in getting into a healthy Muslim marriage. So we do all this stuff, protecting and excitement, but we miss the part about raising our young people to be competent adults, so that they know how to manage and regulate their expectations. They know how to communicate, and they know how to deal in adult relationships. And so I think I often find myself in a position of looking at a situation and saying, boy, that really should have been done a long time ago in the family of origin, well before we get into the marriage. I mean, it's never too late to try and redo it. Even sometimes of therapy are kinds of limited reparenting, but many of the obligations or many of the problems come from not really having an understanding of how to care and work on a team, how to model constructive leadership and mutuality. People have a list of their halal rights, and this is one of the sad things. You can have a perfectly halal marriage that's even abusive. I'm sorry to say, or marrying somebody who's pious, who comes from a good family and everything's halal, is no guarantee that you're going to have a happy marriage unless you understand more than expecting your rights. You want to be focused on how to produce goodness. Marriage should be sweet. The home should be nurturing. And the behaviors you choose will lead to the consequences you get. So I get confused, people saying, well, I did this and I did that, and that's my right. And how come it's not working? My spouse has to change. So it's marriage by demand. And even if you have all those demands met, this is not the path to mutuality, mutual respect, to emotional intimacy, which then is the foundation for any other kind of intimacy. And so for the sweetness of marriage, you need to come in there with something different than your expectations or lack of experience. And so I'm optimistic, but we're struggling. So that's my take on it.
Okay. No, thank you for that. Imam Zijad, I started off by saying that families are struggling, especially during the pandemic. That's something that we're hearing, but is that something you're actually seeing?
Let me maybe go back into what Sister Barbara was doing and what she was talking about. I think, and then I will come to struggles. I think that when people come to us, it's rarely that people who have honey and milk in their marriage would come to us. Rarely people would come to me and say, Imam Zijad, I really want to refresh my marriage, and I just came to talk about how to even make it better. Rarely. I do have people who come, but mostly people who come when they are in a very difficult situation. If they came maybe a few months earlier, it would be much better. They come at that last strike maybe of possible finding solution. And that is where I have found that it is a minority. It is minority of people who are having big issues like abuse, cheating, jealousy, no communication or inappropriate communication. It is not huge chunk of the community, but one big part of the community are those regular ones who are having regular issues. But they are issues, they are not problems.
Right. It's important how we frame them, right?
And yes, and you see, when you have issues, and if you know how to deal with those issues, you will not have problems because you talk them out. They are just small things, like what color of a couch you would like to have. All right, who would cook biryani?
Or couscous.
Both of us, of course. That's the best alternative. And I often tell people, and I often tell people that we don't have time. We are all busy. We are really scattered. Hi, bye, salam, see you, honey. And then we come home, and then we are busy with our gadgets. Why don't we get together into that kitchen and spend some productive time by cooking, learning, spending, that productive time with one another. And actually, there is nothing wrong with it. Why? Because Prophet, peace be upon him, he was one of the people who have helped serve family. When Aisha radiallahu anha, she was asked about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what does he do? What this man does when he comes home? she said, "هو في خدمتي أو مهنة أسرتي." He's always in the service of his family. And then there is a group of people who are really having paradise in this world, in their marriage. There are people who who are not people of rights and responsibilities. These are the people who have seen possibility to make the other person happy, and they will do anything possible to make that person happy. And there are many of them. Subhanallah, I have seen some walking examples in our community where I say, I wish that I knew this when I was younger. You know, and that is exactly what gives me hope. So overall, there are some of those people who are really who have missed the boat. People, as Sister Barbara pointed out, they didn't have proper upbringing, and then their ego was greater than them. And when they came into marriage, thinking, who is the boss in this relationship? And there is no who is the boss. There is who is a partner, good partner in this relationship.
So what I'm getting from both of you is that coming into a marriage with the list of high expectations and demands and rights is probably not the way to start off and to maintain a healthy marriage, right? So perhaps a dose of humility is would be healthy, will be a healthy ingredient towards having a healthy marriage, Sister Barbara.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, what I'm saying is, what do you want? Do you want to be right? Or do you want to have a home that's nourishing and sweet? And so you have to think about what you're doing in terms of what you want. And I think the teamwork aspect, and whether this is a marriage or whether this is a family, I often look at the symbolism of, a small community that has one cooking pot in the middle, and everyone comes and brings what they have and put in the pot. And some people will bring more, some people will bring different things. It's not a tit for tat 50-50. But what happens is that's there to nourish you. And when you need to draw from it, it's there from you. So what you do and how you treat the people around you, it's not just what you do. If you do something toxic to gain control or have your way or not listen to somebody or do it anyway, and you're not paying attention to the impact, that's the same environment. If you're spewing toxicity, that's the same well you have to drink from. And so even enlightened self-interest, it's not just a humility of ego, it's just, where do you want to live? What is the environment that you want? And I think sometimes people act out. Another thing is that there's a misunderstanding between finding comfort in one another and holding someone else responsible for your happiness. We do bring happiness. We do want to do things to serve and make people happy. But my happiness, the happiness of one person is not the demand on someone else. And especially if you feel like, I'm getting married and my partner is going to take care of all my problems and I'll never have any of this again, or my wife is going to bring me peace and happiness. It says this in the Quran, it says this in the Hadith. And if I'm not happy, she's doing something wrong, and so I can do something to show her I'm angry. We can do things, but in the end, each person is responsible for their state. They can ask to be treated with respect. They can sometimes, we talk about boundaries, which are very difficult in Muslim families, but sometimes giving yourself space to function so that other people's rights, wishes and demands don't destabilize you. But after that, we are responsible for our own character, our own ethic, and for our own state of happiness. And so we contribute to this, but we can't hold somebody else responsible. And therefore, so these are things that sometimes people, when they don't know how to be separate adults and they don't know how to be a couple, they miss that. And so instead, they project what they're expecting on the other partner and are very upset when it doesn't happen. It doesn't work like that. You have to be responsible for your actions, your behaviors, your expectations, and then you share it. And sometimes your partner doesn't meet your expectations or your needs, and you deal with that disappointment, but you don't punish them as if something you are entitled to has been denied you. Because it's sometimes you get this dynamic and people are in adult bodies, using adult, rights and responsibilities, but they're behaving like children that feel that they're deprived of something that they're entitled to. And that's not the adult emotional expectations. And we often set our kids up for this, and how we treat them. And again, emotional regulation, mature communication, mature expectations, and knowing what's your business What are things that you can expect of someone, and what is something that's really your thing to deal with? If you're dissatisfied with life, don't blame it on other people. Figure out what you can do first.
Imam Zijad, let's actually for the both of you, but I'm going to go to Imam Zijad now. Let's put a scenario out there. So, hypothetical Abdullah and hypothetical Zainab get married, mashallah. They have a very nice wedding. Their parents spend, they have their family photos, and they go on their honeymoon, and and now they're settled in, they're settling into their lives. What are some of the things that they should be looking out for, especially as they get into a routine of taking care of household chores, of going to work, and eventually starting a family? They're blessed with a child, mashallah. What are some of the ingredients that they are at risk, perhaps, of losing now that they had in the beginning?
Okay. Marriage is a very simple thing, am I right? I know that all married people will disagree with me, but it is a very simple thing, actually. What is also interesting is to get married is very easy, but to maintain healthy relationship, it's not so easy. Why? Because there has to be a commitment, and commitment by dedication, not by force. And when we have commitment by constraint, that marriage doesn't work at all. So when people get married, what happens to many, what I see when I talk to people whom I have performed their marriages, I actually would not perform easily marriage without 2 or 3 sessions of pre-marriage counseling. I see that as compulsory. I think that many of our youngsters, when they enter marriage, they don't have a clue of what they are getting into. They think they have heard about rights and responsibilities, and that's all. I think that's a very dry approach to marriage. I think what they need to realize is right now, once when they come from honeymoon, it's a payback time. Right now, you really have to live with each other every single day, 24/7. Oh man, again with this person, every single day you are living with them. So what they miss at the very beginning, and I often tell them as they come after a year or 2 years to me to talk about it, I tell them, guys, have time to get to know each other. Not with your friends, not with your family. Date each other. Give your time fully to one another. Get to know each other. Get to know how you think. Speak about religion. Speak about culture. Speak about hobbies. Speak about friends. Speak about jobs. Whatever. Plan. Read a book together. Think together. These are some of the things that many people don't do. They don't have enough time together at the very beginning because they are busy. They have friends to talk to. Then they have families that are pulling them towards them, and then they don't have time for themselves. They don't discuss topics that are essential for them at the very beginning. Sometimes they are afraid. It's almost like walking on the shells of the eggs. They don't know, what to talk about. Maybe they don't have enough trust yet. But how they would have trust if they didn't spend time with one another and didn't get to know each other. And what is interesting is that many of people are not ready to be vulnerable in marriage. They should be. They should be ready to be vulnerable in front of their spouse. When we got married, we said for good or bad. All right. And many are not. Establish, what is important at the very beginning, where many people miss, is to establish that your spouse is number one person in their life. Number one. Of course, parents have theirs, space in the heart, but spouse, you are totally committed to each other. And lastly, what I think, and I think it is important for people of 10 years of marriage as it is important for 20 years of marriage. We have to spend productive time with one another. I call it date your spouse.
Sister Barbara, going back to that, hypothetical example, what are some of the things that young couples may inadvertently miss or be blindsided by? So what are some of the things that they should be looking out for as they build their marriage together?
I think that in any relationship, you have to be careful that you don't assume that your common sense is common. We have different cultures, different approaches, different family structures and settings, different life experiences, even under one roof. And so one of the problems is finding compatibility and familiarity. And you can learn this. It's impossible to find people that are exactly the same. So there's going to be some adjustment. And if you have that kind of open curiosity, you can have your assumptions about how life is, but don't assume that someone's doing something wrong. Get to know it and find out, because you're joining two different ways. It's not that this is right and the other person comes. So I think sometimes people will make judgments and they will make assumptions about what is the right way of doing things, and not realizing that it's not going to be your way or your partner's way. It's going to be something new, which is a combination. And the other thing, have respect and pay attention. One of the things that happens is people may have assumptions about the way life goes. It may be a bit different with people who are second generation, third generation born in Canada. But I know sometimes people who have functioned in a more traditional setting, they will have a certain expectation about how roles are done. Well, in other cultural settings, there may be a number of very different factors. If you have, for example, for raising children, if you have a whole community, you have your neighborhood kuche, like your neighborhood where you'd have maybe younger girls that would love to come and help take care of your baby. You've got an aunt, you've got a sister, you've got your mom, you've got your mother-in-law. So what can be expected in terms of domestic organization is quite different when you come to Canada. And very often, even if you have those relatives there, they're all busy. And so what happens is that if you're assuming certain services are going to happen and you don't know the work that's involved because they've always just been there, you may have a partner that is trying to do all those things that is expected in that lifestyle, especially when we have gendered roles, which are fine. It's not a problem if you want to have gendered roles, who's providing, who's caring for children, as long as it's not assumed, as long as it's understood the labor involved. A house that's well run, you leave in the morning, you come back and it looks like nothing has changed because all that activity is done and clean up. And so you say, oh, you just sat around here. Well, no, there was tremendous activity. Don't assume and just expect, now where's my dinner? And so spend a day like the Prophet, peace be upon him, who helped at the home. It might be very good training to try and do all the tasks that go to work day, stay at home day, and work at home. Try to understand the labors involved, because if you know what's actually involved, you'll have a whole lot more patience why you're not getting the service you think you're getting. Same thing like expectations, whether it's expectations for domestic service or expectations for material provision. I needed this, so-and-so had a couch of this. Like, be kind to your spouse. Try to understand. We have a situation here where we have less domestic help. Very often you need two breadwinners, two income earners. Don't just have unrealistic expectations that set people up for failure and they always feel incompetent. That brings really bitterness into the marriage. You didn't earn enough money for me to get this. Oh, I came home and I didn't have that. It's teamwork, and it's flexible teamwork. And don't expect something to be there. Understand the labors involved and help and be reasonable with each other. But you can't do that unless you pay attention, unless you look, and unless you don't approach it like, well, you should be doing that. I'm entitled to that. That thinking is toxic, but we have it. We're aware of our pressures and we're aware of what somebody hasn't given to us, and we need to change our thinking. Again, it's flexible teamwork. And so the question about being home alone with kids in COVID, try to understand and take this as a team. What can you do so that people's needs are met? And maybe one person is tired, one person has energy. You have to work together. When children act out, it's because very often there's tension in the home. Uh, if find a way to help your children soothe and learn self-soothing. And if you soothe each other, if you have a sense of humor, if you take this as a team challenge rather than blaming somebody else for the conditions, you even distress, I mean, even kids who misbehave, if you have a sense of humor and the parents, are kind of playing tag team, rather than, they can absorb a lot. And when the children feel this security and this serenity, very often they're much easier to deal with. So take it as a challenge, be creative, but work together as a team, and don't just assume that I'm entitled to this, you should be doing that, but my work is so hard, why are you not helping me? Resentment comes there. The other thing is that when you do know the labors of someone else, a simple example, if after the end of a meal, everybody gets up and they bring their dishes to the sink, that takes about 3 minutes. And if you don't have a dishwasher, you wash the dishes right then before they stick. If everybody just wants to relax and say, I have time, one person spends 45 minutes getting the stuff to the sink. By the time you want to wash the dishes, that's a 3-hour task. And what does it feel like to the person who your 10 minutes of inconvenience versus several hours of their time? When you say you want to respect somebody, this is not respecting them. It's like your time and all the things you're doing is less valuable than my convenience. If we did it together, it's not just less work, but the powers are multiplied. The tasks are easier. And then when you do that and you have that sense of teamwork, when you see somebody else who needs something, you want to help them. So it's a different momentum in a couple and in a family. And when you have that teamwork, you can take on incredible stresses and you feel good as opposed to distress and turning on each other. I'm going to just draw on one of the wonderful experiences that I had, and I hope this doesn't sound beating my own drum here. I had the privilege of going to boot camp at 56 years old. I'm the oldest person there, carrying my backpack and my ruck for military training. And they have what they called artificially created stress environments. They put you in trouble because you'll either turn on each other or you'll learn to survive. So I stayed up all night because I was the one who knew how to sew. And I sewed name tags into everybody's uniform so that we could go out. We had to go to a lime infested a field and roll around on the ground. And so if I didn't sew those name tags in so people could get their uniforms back after being dipped in pesticide, I was exposing my teammates to potentially getting Lyme disease. And I said, okay, forget it. I'm going to do that. I'm going to stay up all night. And even if I fail my inspection the next morning, I'll do this because I can't watch my teammates suffer. And the next morning I'm all confused. It's inspection and I'm exhausted. And 4 people came in, they ironed my t-shirts. You've got to have hospital corners that they measure. And I never forgot that. And so then when it was time for challenges where they have to, climb over ropes, and I can't do this, they're hoisting me. I did the sewing, I did this other stuff. They got me over the obstacles and we never forgot it. So you either turn on each other or you have each other's back. And if you can get that teamwork thing, then stress bonds you. But what is that magic? What is that barakat, I'll say, that changes the way that you respond to stress so that it makes you stronger and closer together as opposed to bitter and hitting each other? I learned a lot in that experience. And it was all the raising kids and school and whatever. That was the thing that gave me the most resilience to succeed in a very high pressured environment. And so this is where you do it. This is where you come of age as an adult and show your mettle is how you turn towards each other rather than against each other.
There is another thing that is maybe important here, and I often find I would say as an ingredient that helps marriages. I often tell people in marriage you have to be supportive and supportable. You have to support each other and you have to allow each other to be supported. You don't have to feel that you are weak if somebody helps you. And often that could happen in relationship. So we have to be supportive and supportable at the same time. That I think that then points out that you are really in a duet, not a duel. Mm-hmm. So in these moments, I think things start working. Things start working right for everybody. Because I've seen with people who really, who are out there for each other. They ask, honey, could you help me? I need, why not? These are some of the things that I believe they soften hearts of each other. They are small, but they are big. And if you start just doing small things in our relationship, and that's the reason why I said at the very beginning, marriage is a very simple thing. Problem, we complicate it. We complicate it not because we are bad. We complicate it, we don't know better. We complicate it because we sometimes have ego and we go back into rules, and sorry, sister, it's not a military MIA space.
No, that's,
no,
no,
right.
but I mean, rules for the purpose of bonding, right? So we do have rules, we do have expectations, but what are we doing with them? Okay. And so I like what you're saying. There's a nice comment there. One of the best pieces of advice given to me for my relationships is that life it's you two against the problem, not you against them. And that's it. So what happens is if you say, how can I help you? Oh, can I do this? It's not either someone controlling. It's not somebody who's afraid and is trying to serve and can never get it right. And it's not somebody who's dependent. Like, you all have to rise to the task. So the same way that somebody who's controlling an expectation, somebody who's expecting to be taken care of, there's a sweetness in being taken care of, so that then you can go nurture in another place. Nobody should get a free ride, So you invest. So if I go back to that cooking pot thing, you don't just always take from the pot and expect it to be there. You contribute, but you do it without that kind of, I did one, you have to do one, you have to do two. Like, when you quantify it, it does something that makes it transactional rather than transformational.
Certainly. I think that's an important point, when it is not I do one, you do another. No, it's a mutual. It's, if I am sitting and you are working, I'm going to do it. If I'm sitting again and you are working, I'm going to do it another time. And if it is 10th time, no problem. And I think that attitude tells the other person, hey, this person is behind you 110%.
Yeah, it's really about having the attitude of sacrifice, right? So
of course,
really looking at, like, really recognizing or having the right understanding of what my role is supposed to be in this relationship. So I'm not there to be served, but rather I want to be of service to other. And indeed, actually, I believe that should be our attitude in this dunya altogether, right? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent us here so that we serve others. We serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, and through that, we serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by serving others. So yes, of course, there are times when we're tired and we want people to take care of us, and but at the same time, we want to have more. We want to be giving more than we take, right? And at the end of the day, I think if we have that attitude in the world, in all of our relationships, then there's a good chance that we'll find ourselves on the right path. But I really like all the excellent. There's so many excellent points actually that were made, mashallah. But two of them that I would also like to highlight. Number one, Sister Barbara, your point about everyone just contributing and just doing their part, and it's so true, right? Like, if 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes of not even, I wouldn't even call it inconvenience, right? Because if I'm looking after myself, right, like, why is that inconvenient, right? Why should I have this attitude of privilege that I should be the one being served? So I mean, if I'm looking after myself, I'm not really doing a favor to anyone. Like, if I'm picking up my own dishes, or if I'm putting away my own clothes, or doing my own laundry, or ironing my own clothes, or whatever it is, like, why should I have the expectation that someone else is going to do this for me? So, but if we all have that attitude where we just at least take care of ourselves, children included, meaning especially teenagers or children who are a bit older, then absolutely it can make life so much easier for the person who otherwise, or even the parents, if they're both sharing the work or helping each other. Life just becomes a lot easier if everyone just does a little bit to take care of themselves. So that was a really excellent point. The other thing also that I like to remind couples about sometimes is that we learn so much about good character, right? Like, about giving people 70 excuses and having opinion of others and speaking kindly. But why is it that all of those things, all of these teachings about good character, we practice outside the home? When we come inside the home, it's as if we've left all of that at the door many times, and it's almost like we're completely different people. So if anything, those teachings about good character should be implemented first and foremost in the home. I'm not saying to discard it outside, not to deal nicely with others, but all of those teachings about brotherhood and sisterhood that we practice, or we try to practice with others, they apply very much inside our own home. So just a couple of thoughts that were crossing my mind as well.
I think this approach that you have mentioned, that is something really that people practice kindness, mercy. We are more kind to strangers. Okay, practicing it out there, I think practicing being the nicest in the masjid, being the nicest at work, and being mean at home, it's a hypocrisy. And I think we have to deal with it, because mercy and kindness and respect and all of these nice, beautiful characters that we have in our faith starts really behind the doors of our homes. And that is where we are measured, actually, more than anywhere else. It's easy to be nice out there because you don't have many responsibilities. But when you come back, that's where you have many responsibilities, and that's where you are put a task.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking, I don't remember, I think it's Gottman had this, but one negative or bitter interaction takes, is it 7 or 10 positive? So we don't realize when we just let loose on people, the damage. And I think a lot of this is morale. If we have a situation like respect, which also is gratitude and awareness and appreciation. So some people are heavy lifters. They don't need a tit for tat. They can do 10 jobs and you do 1 job. That's fine. But if you are aware and you appreciate, and when they need that 1 job, you do it. It's, I don't know how depressing it is. I'm carrying loads and loads of groceries on my back. I don't mind to do that. I'm glad I can do that. It's like, I'm being strong. But if somebody doesn't bother to move their car so that I don't get a parking place, like just something that could have been easy, put your car to the side so I can carry these bags in. That lack of respect, that lack of gratitude or appreciation is so morale crushing. On the other hand, people want to serve. When they see that they're appreciated, there's something that motivates them and they want to give more. So again, let's be wise. Let's be wise. If you want to create an environment that you want to live in and you want to know that people have your back, don't sabotage it by bad character, by carelessness. Yeah, if you lose your temper, repair it. But it will take you not only repairing it, but 7 to 10 other, I might have those numbers quite wrong, but I think it's 7 good interactions to make up for the damage that you do. So why do that? That's not wise. So again, you are building by your actions the consequence and the environment that you want to live in. And where do you want to live? What kind of a home? What kind of environment? Be wise.
See, one thing that I'm trying to read between the lines and maybe where people are missing in terms of overall family structure is that people take care maybe of the other, but they do not take care of themselves. And I think what couples need to do is they need to have time for themselves. Because if you are nonstop giving and giving and giving, you'll be exhausted. Okay, so there is a saying that goes, at one point in time you'll deplete and you cannot give what you don't have anymore. Mm-hmm. So from that perspective, it is very much important that couples do have time for themselves, for personal development, for personal reflection, for taking care of them physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatsoever, as long as they are really refreshing themselves and tuning themselves or maintaining themselves to be healthier in that regard.
So this is a really interesting topic. We talk about self-care. We also talk about giving in compensation rather than out of abundance. And sometimes when we get caught in negative patterns, certain people take on the role of having to give. They only have value if they're serving others. And sometimes they can run themselves ragged. And I find this, again, I even deal often with Muslim women. And I don't say men are not having those experiences, but sometimes they'll get the understanding that the only thing of a value is if I'm serving someone else, and they don't give them permission to take care of themselves. So I have to remind them, if you want a tree to bear fruit, you have to water its roots. Also, self-care in clinical work is taught in ethics. If you don't take care of yourself, you make mistakes and you harm others. Ideally, you should treat yourself and care for yourself. Your body, your mind is an amanat, and it's an amana, and you should be concerned about your own fitra. If you abuse it, even for the idea of good deeds, and you have no balance, this is not the end of this is not very good. You may feel like a martyr. You may be always giving, but you have to care for yourself. You have to have a healthy sense of self-esteem. And this is, you don't need to wait for someone else to give you permission to care. And I deal with women who push themselves to the point of sickness because they feel it's selfish. But self-care is not selfish. Self-respect is not selfish. It's a necessary thing. And sometimes I find women will get themselves to the point that they will break down. And sometimes the only way to get them to pay attention is if I say, well, would you treat your child the way you're treating yourself? And all of a sudden they kind of say, oh, no, of course they wouldn't. And I said, okay, you can't treat yourself less than you would treat the person you care for. And if you won't do it for yourself, do it for the children that you care for, because who's going to be there? So again, they're the fruit of the tree. If you're not watering the root, what happens? And so I think the thing is that healthy self-care, having boundaries, having breaks, being able to do something that nourishes you, it puts you in a different position so that you can give more, but you give out of abundance, not out of deficiency. So I have two models. Like, I love to work. I'm very overextended. I love to do things. I hate to say no, but I know that the difference is not the amount of time and the activities I have. It's how I do them. One model is like the car engine with the battery. Once the sparks go on, the more it runs, the more it recharges. And that, again, is that transformational encounters that when you spend your time, you feel part of something, you know you're giving something, and you're receiving, you see where your labors have gone. The other model is you're going to give blood and somebody put the tube in and they forgot to take it out. And the more you give, the worse you feel. And so whenever your giving starts to be like blood donation that somebody forgot to turn off the thing, time to stop. So it's how you give. Are you recharging? Are you re-energizing your environment? Or are you slowly dying? And if you don't give yourself permission to take care of yourself, that's another issue you really have to look into. That's service without balance. And it's not fun to be married to a martyr. You want somebody with a sense of humor, a sense of life, vitality. That means self-care. That's appealing in a marriage. You need to preserve that.
I have a question for both of you. I I'm a very sort of hands-on, practical type of person. So theories and ideas, tips are important. They're wonderful. I'm going to give you another scenario here, because I think a lot of people find themselves in this type of situation, especially now. So it's a family, mashallah, mother, father, husband, wife. They have children. Maybe they're facing financial stress, especially during the pandemic. They're facing, behavioral challenges with one or more of their children. They're trying to manage multiple jobs, or at least are working. Both parents are working. They're trying to help their children with homework. They're trying to pay the bills. They're trying to get the house clean. They're trying to keep the car in good repair. They're trying. They're trying to manage everything, and they really don't have much time or energy or resources to take a lot of breaks or do a lot of the good things that we're talking about. So what I would like from each of you, Imam Zijad, if you can give some tips for the husband, some things that he can do to turn that relationship that he has with his wife into a healthier one. I'm assuming here that the marriage is struggling. It may be, it may not be, but just the fact that this is a household and a family under stress, what are some easy things that people can do, that each spouse can do to help, bring some life and some energy into that otherwise pretty tired and stressful relationship? So, Sister Barbara for the wife, and Imam Zijad for the husband.
There are so many things that I could say.
Well, let's go for it. Bismillah.
Oh man,
That don't cost anything and that are easy to do.
You brothers, where is my stick? Okay, so so I think one simple thing where Muslim man should start with is, please express yourself to your wife. Tell her that you care about her. It's not sin. It's your halal wife, am I right? Tell her that you love her. Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he did so. When Aisha radiallahu anha asked him, how is that love of yours? He told her, like the knot on the rope. And often she would ask, how is that knot? And he would tell her, like ever before. So there is nothing wrong. And I think it's a simple thing that really could change dynamic within the relationship. And there is nothing wrong of expressing that love to other people as well about your spouse. Prophet, peace be upon him, said that too. We know it when Amr ibn al-As, he asked Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya Rasulullah, whom do you love the most? He said, Aisha. He didn't think twice, am I right? He said, Aisha. And then he asked, Ya Rasulullah, min al-rijal, from men. He said, her dad. You see? You basically, you use all opportunities to connect your spouse to say how much you care about her. Another thing, besides this, I think giving compliments is something where Muslim men are a little bit hard. They are not easy on that. I think giving compliments is another thing. I mean, honestly, sincerely, tell your wife, honey, MashaAllah. Why not? It's a simple thing, but it could change relations in many, many ways. If, as I said, another thing is that where a husband could really, specifically in today's time, offer help in practical sense. Get into that kitchen and prepare lunch for your family. If not on Friday, then on Saturday and Sunday. There is nothing wrong with it. I think it would bring family together. And another thing that maybe it's important is, since wife often spends a lot of time with children, in many cases in our community, it is important to know that you should always be on the same page with your wife in terms of upbringing of your children. Don't be watching from the sidelines. Rather, support your wife in what she's doing. If you don't, kids are very smart. They would know where is the weak link, and they would always use it against each other. So bottom line is, we need practically to show that through our care or love, as well as practical application of our help and support.
Wonderful. Sister Barbara, for the wives,
Good.
what advice can you offer?
So I'm thinking of three things. First off, is pay attention. Sometimes people talk about love languages, although you don't want to say, hey, my language is service, give me more. So pay attention. What is the thing that really is important? I remember reading one time in a marriage prep course where someone really wanted to have a clean towel every time they showered. They wanted a clean towel. They could care less whether the dinner was cooked if the clean towel was there. So pay attention. You can be flexible. Maybe you can't do all kinds of things. Maybe you're not as good a housekeeper as the mom was or whatever. Don't put that pressure on you. You're building a new life. But pay attention, Evan, if there's something that really would show that you've noticed, and that there's some aspect of service that you can provide, or presence or comfort or companionship. What is the most important thing? And try to be fully present because you notice, because people like to feel heard. If you say, hey, I'm a great cook, why don't you? And the person is not that interested. Okay, cooking is important, but you keep saying, I'm giving you what I want to give you. But if you pay attention and be happy with me, it's much nicer if the person realizes you've paid attention and you're giving something because that is valuable to the person. So pay attention and target something that you can do that shows sweetness. The other thing I think is what I mentioned before was manage expectations. Set up your spouse for success, not failure. Try to understand the pressures that they're under and what's reasonable, and adjust yourself. If it means that you have to, not get that new TV, or you gotta, have that used car, or like the idea of what you show and what you have should be in balance with what is possible. So you do not. So when you understand the pressures that your spouse is under, try to make your expectations reasonable that are doable in a day. If there's some problem or illness or stress, see if you can understand that so that they don't come back and feel like they want to feel support and comfort rather than a sense of one more, sense of failure. That really is very hard when somebody doesn't understand and adjust and be reasonable. Final thing is take care of yourself. Do things that nourish your mind. Like the nice thing is if you have an adult, full lifed person and another person and you share things, that's much nicer than other forms of deficiency. I'm bored, I'm lonely. Think about as many things you can do so that when you meet together, you're happy. You have things to talk about, you have things to share rather than demands. We can do a lot to keep ourselves. So you'd like to spend time with somebody who is pleasant, who is in good shape, who is taking care of their mind, their body, their spirit. So taking care of yourself so that you are a pleasant partner to be with is part of the contribution to your marriage as well. So I would say the three things is try to target and pay special attention to what is meaningful to your partner. Pay attention and notice. Make your expectations of what you expect from your partner realistic and doable, and take care of yourself so that you're not sitting there needing this, needing that. Share your time together as joy and celebration, not like, I need this, you didn't do this, I need that. Like, we can take care of ourselves so that we don't have to be needy. We can share with joy, not demand with need.
And if
Beautiful.
things don't go our way, as often they don't, we just have to forgive.
We can live with disappointment, but our spouses are not there created to meet every need. Sometimes our expectations are not reasonable. Sometimes we have to live with imperfect people, and guess what? Probably we're not perfect either. So yeah, you can be disappointed, but try to realize that again, your spouse, unless you're being mistreated, you do the best that you can, but you can't demand happiness from your spouse and then feel like you've been cheated if you don't get it. Rise to the occasion.
Problematic thing that I often find with couples that come to me is that they keep grudges. They hold on to it for years. You remember 10 years ago what you said to me. And I think living in the past breaks possibilities of today and tomorrow. And that is what we really need to work with people, that they start living today, present moment in which they are. Not, of course, we need to learn from the past. We need to get the lesson, but not always live under the shadow of the past and what you said, what he said, and so on and so on.
That's such an excellent point because, I think one of the two things actually, the two most demoralizing and destructive behaviors between couples, I believe, is number one, when someone is, and it's actually not just between couples, in any relationship, it could be between parents and children as well. But when someone is actually trying to care and be considerate and going out of their way to help you or care for you in some way, to shut that down or to demean that can be very, very hurtful, and very demoralizing as well, right? So if someone is making an effort, and it's bad enough if that effort is not being recognized, but then if on top of that it's actually shut down and put down, uh, like why should that person, like why would they want to continue caring for you and trying to be kind to you and be loving if their love and their care is not going to be appreciated? So that is the first thing. The second one is when we are in a situation where we are you know trying to pick things from the past in when a person is actually trying to change. So let's say you've made your point about your spouse or about another person, and you said you have this problem X, Y, and Z. You've done this in the past. This was hurtful. This was wrong. This was, you've laid out your case. You've made your point clear, and now that person is actually trying to change, and they're actually trying to make an effort to change their behavior, yet you keep reminding them about the past. You keep reminding them about what they did previously, whereas now they're not doing it anymore. And sometimes, I'm talking to couples, and that's actually true. That person is not doing, what they have done in the past. And yes, I recognize perhaps what they did was very hurtful. Maybe, there was some trauma involved, but they're actually making an effort to change now, and they have stopped that behavior. They're not doing it anymore, and they're trying to change themselves. And when they're constantly reminded of what happened in the past, I feel like that can also be very demotivating and demoralizing, where a person's goodness is totally unappreciated.
I'd really like to jump into there because it goes to both of the things that Imam Delic and Imam Sikander have said, is that what you want is you want to facilitate conditions of change. And so in terms of forgiveness is good for you, so not getting stuck. It doesn't mean forgetting an issue or not addressing an issue that needs to be addressed, but it means not getting stuck there. And there's usually, it's dangerous when you start to say you always, but you've always done this, you never. Whenever you start to use those superlatives, then you are not you're creating conditions of accusation where people feel defensive rather than conditions of change. So even if somebody has done this 100 times literally, reminding that they've done it 100 times literally assumes that the one time they make a mistake and they do it again is part of that. You have to slow it down, and you have to intentionally say, this time, this way, okay, don't say you never do anything to help me. Say, I need you to help bring these dishes at this time and this place to the sink so that I can finish doing it. So you make it a doable task, and you don't take the weight of everything that happened before, because otherwise, like, you're expressing your emotional frustration, but you are not setting up conditions for change. And always, sometimes when people have negative experiences and they say, but it's so hard, they have done it all that time and over. Yes, and you need to deal with that at a different way in a different time. That's an emotional but if you want it to change, you have to bring it down to this time, and correct it at the point so that you can learn new behaviors. Otherwise, that will stop you from that moment of change. And it's usually gradual. Somebody doesn't just never get angry anymore. They get less angry and then they apologize. And to get real change, sometimes it goes like this. It's not just you turn the dial and you don't do it anymore. So you have to be prepared to take that journey where you take it down to one step, correct that step, next step, not forever, you never, you always.
Wonderful. It's been such an enriching conversation tonight. I know it's Friday night. You need to be with your families. We're talking about healthy marriages, so I don't want to prolong this. So final words of advice or parting suggestions as we close tonight. Sister Barbara, we'll go with you first.
So I feel like I've already said a lot. I see many people struggling, but I am an optimist. I think that we have a lot of difficulties, but if we're aware, if we try, there's no reason that people can't find happiness in their life. And so have the courage to invest in the type of marriage you'd like to live in.
Communicate, communicate, communicate. Don't bury stuff under the carpet. Put things on the table, be transparent, be honest, ask. There is no taboo topic. I think when we are communicating, we use, and specifically if we are communicating using Quranic models, قول كريم, قول معروف, قول بليغ, قول, others, we are in a very good position. So communication, I think it's something that is lacking, and I mean appropriate communication. It is lacking in marriages, and I hope, inshallah, if we establish good communication in our relationship, and we know what and when to say what we want to say, I think happiness would be part of our marriages. Assalamu alaikum.
And actually say it and not just text, right?
Say it, talk it, don't text
absolutely.
it.
Absolutely. Treat your spouse the way you want to be treated. And whenever you see some goodness, always try to appreciate it. Even if it's small goodness, make it big. Thank you so much. Jazakumullahu khaira. Imam Zijad, can we have a short dua as we close?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much, Sister Barbara, Imam Zijad. It's been such a pleasure.
You're very welcome.
Salam. Thank you.
All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining us for Friday Night Mic Drop. I hope that you found this session to be beneficial and helpful in some way. Certainly, none of us are perfect. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us as human beings. As human beings, we have shortcomings, we make mistakes. We are not angels. And our spouses, our children are not angels either. We are all human beings. That means that we are all going to have shortcomings and we are all going to make mistakes. So let us have an attitude of forgiveness, of kindness, of compassion towards others. Yes, we will make mistakes. When we make mistakes, we say sorry and we accept our mistakes. When we say something or do something which is upsetting to another person, perhaps we don't understand why it is upsetting, or perhaps we don't agree that it should be upsetting, but we acknowledge the emotions and the response of the other individual, and we try our best to treat others the way we want to be treated. These are all golden rules that we learn from our deen that are things that we should be practicing with others. And most importantly, we can start with these steps, these tips, inshallah, within our homes. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless your family, your children, your parents, your future generations till the day of judgment. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant love and unity and togetherness, compassion and kindness, happiness with Iman and Taqwa in all of our homes. Ameen, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Thank you so much for joining us. Jazakumullahu khaira. This session is recorded on YouTube and Facebook, so feel free to share it with your family members and friends if you find it to be beneficial. And please remember us in your du'as. Jazakumullahu khaira. Wassalamu alaikum.